Many people believe that Beijing is a city of overpopulation, innovation, and new opportunities, whereas China's countryside is filled with agriculture, close-knit communities, and plain folk. While some of these statements are true, Fen Fang proves in 20 Fragments of Ravenous Youth that not all of them are authentic.
Many believe that Beijing is a city of overpopulation. In Beijing, the total population is 21.7 million people. That's 1,322 people per square kilometer. In the book, Fen Fang describes how crowded the city was. She describes an area called the Hutongs as long, thin alleys bordered by low gray houses surrounding noisy, cramped courtyards. The city is packed, noisy, and tight from the amount of people in a small area. It is overwhelming for Fen Fang, being a peasant who yielded from the country. Beijing is a city of innovation. China is generally known as being highly innovative, especially with technology. Fen Fang expected to come to a city totally different than what she got. Beijing is very uniform and it's difficult for individuals to be innovative, but as a whole, the country is always trying out new ideas.
Beijing is a place filled with new opportunities. Many people travel to big cities in order to find themselves. Fen Fang Wang travels to the city of Beijing in order to discover who she is and how she wants to live her life. She started off her life in a small countryside village and realized that she wouldn't discover who she is unless she escaped from the prison-like cell she was living in. Doing the same thing every day was ruining Fen Fang's life. She knew that she wanted to be an actress, and leaving her home village was the only way to pursue her dreams. Even though her plans were changed many times, she still got to experience so much more in the city compared to if she'd stayed in the countryside. Moving to Beijing gave Fen Fang a purpose and helped her find what she wanted to do with the rest of her life.
The Chinese countryside is filled with agriculture. The stock story of agriculture being the main focus of the Chinese countryside is reinforced with Fen Fang's description of her native village, Ginger Hill. Fen Fang describes the landscape of her village, saying, "Those vast, silent walls surrounded our village like a wall. They stretched across the hills and into the distance, sweet potatoes as far as the eye could see. Everybody works in the fields, growing and harvesting their sweet potatoes, or, in the words of Fen Fang, sat and wove never-ending baskets out of dried sweet potato stalks. Everybody's lives revolve around the sweet potatoes." Fen Fang really exemplifies this idea when she says that her mother only ever said these two things to her. "Sweet potatoes, in a few days we'll need to break off the stalks and feed them to the pigs," or "It's time to make sweet potato flour for the Qingming festival dumplings." The countryside is often seen as being close-knit. Normally, when we think of small rural communities, we think of them as being very close-knit or intimate. We think of neighbors greeting each other every morning, community members sharing stories and laughs with one another, and a sense of security which is achieved by knowing that your neighbors and community members will always look after one another. This, however, is not how Fen Fang describes her small rural village in her Chinese countryside. Everybody is cold and shows little to no interest in one another, including her own family. They sit silently at the table, they never speak to each other, their entire house is silent. The only time she hears from her neighbors is when the old man spits and coughs twice. In fact, the only thing of noise in her village is the river in the distance, which also happens to be her only friend.
China's countryside is believed to be filled with plain folk. The Chinese people meet one of their basic needs with food. In China, sweet potatoes were one of the basic foods that they eat with every meal. Lots of people in China drink tea with their meals as well. Fen Fang describes the way the people lived as being plain and boring. She eventually got to the point in which she compared her mother to a sweet potato. Everybody in the countryside were sitting around waiting for something to happen. Yet, in the city, no one waited around. There was a constant movement, and there was always something happening. Fen Fang felt like her life was wasting away in the countryside, and that was her main reason for moving to Beijing.